Hello and welcome to Sportacino. My name is Richard Parr and you are watching Fact or Fiction. You'll see in that corner of the screen, coming up in just a moment, I will be speaking to the sports journalist David Garrett as we have a big review of everything that has happened over the weekend in not just the Premier League, but sports in general. And we would love to get your opinion as well. We are live on Periscope, we're live on Facebook, and we're live on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed or follow those channels, please go and do that. Why haven't you done that already? Would love for you to do that. And you'll also be able to watch this show back at sportacino.com. And we're also on as a podcast on iTunes. So please subscribe, rate and review. Say it's really, really good or whatever you like. In fact, any kind of rating and review is really good for our program. Now, it was a very busy week of sports, and you may have noticed we haven't been on the air for the last 2 weeks because I've been away in Turkmenistan. Yes, I was commentating at the Asian Indoor and Martial Arts Games in Ashgabat, commentating Muay Thai and kickboxing. But don't worry, I am back and I'll be here every single Monday from 11 UK time. Of course, that'll change when the clocks go back. So it'll be 11 GMT in a few weeks, but we will be here every single Monday. And of course, we've got the Best in the World podcast coming from the Sportacino brand every Thursday as a podcast. So go and listen to that. All right, I believe my guest is ready. So I think we are ready to play some fact or fiction. So I'm delighted to say that joining me on the program is not only a former colleague, but a friend as well, David Garrett. Welcome to Sportacino.
Hello.
So David, we've worked together for many, many years over in Doha, but of course you are a huge Southampton fan and I believe you went to see them play this weekend. How was it?
Wet. Well, it was a wet afternoon in Stoke, and obviously we didn't win either, which made it more difficult. It was a bit old school at the beginning. We got there and the wind was lashing into the stadium. I went with my father. I quite often go with my father and my friends. And in terms of the way Saints played, they played okay, but I think Stoke just had the measure of us. They obviously missed a penalty as well, so they could have been 2-0 up or even 3-0 up by half time. Saints didn't really play very well in the first half. Second half, Saints had a bit of a go, but by then it was probably a little bit too little too late. They got back to 1-1, but I think Stoke probably always were the more likely to win. But Southampton could have got a draw on another day. And we're somewhere in mid-table, and I think that's pretty much where we're going to stay. And I would think Stoke will be alongside us somewhere. They look two teams with similar ability, both mostly playing in red and white stripes. So I think look for those two S's in the middle of the table somewhere at the end of the season. There's not too much to be excited about watching Saints at the moment. They're very dull. They are very dull to watch. Say a little bit of energy when they went behind, but it's no good doing it afterwards, as my dad would say. You've got to do it before. He's right.
I was about to say, you haven't really sold that game to the neutrals there, David. Stoke versus Southampton.
Well, it wasn't a great game of football. Because apart from Shaqiri, of course I'm biased, so I'm looking at it from a Southampton point of view, and we lost, so you can't expect me to be too excited about it. But I try and look at it from a more neutral point of view. I mean, the one player you would look at and say, he was worth the admission fee was probably Shaqiri. He was lively, had good touch, his movement up front gave Saints all kinds of problems, he had a couple of shots that were saved. And why he didn't take the penalty for Stoke, goodness knows why. I mean, Berahino's been so out of form, hasn't he? I suppose. Maybe he's got it in his contract, isn't he? He takes the penalties. He might have to take out his contract if that's the case, because he never looked confident when he stepped up. So he was probably the difference, really, Shaqiri. You need those players that you're buzzing around the centre halves trying to make things happen. And Stoke had that, and probably Southampton didn't. We've got Dusan Tadic, who's off form a little bit at the moment, and Nathan Redmond, who's very, very inconsistent at best. And that's why we don't score any goals. We create chances because we don't have any creative players.
All right, David, we will touch on Southampton a little bit further in our fact or fiction, but we're going to start with a little bit more quality than perhaps what you saw between Stoke and Southampton. And we are going to begin the show talking about the best goal of the weekend, and Philippe Coutinho scored the best Premier League goal of the weekend. Fact or fiction?
But you're going
Dave?
to say De Bruyne, no? When you said best goal of the weekend, I thought you were going to say De Bruyne.
No, De Bruyne I've got down as our next topic for the best midfielder in the Premier League right now. But by the sounds of it, you're going fiction for that Coutinho goal.
Well, and then now see how I'm thinking, you see, Rich. Now I'm thinking about which goal I think was better. Well, my first thought when you said the best goal of the weekend was De Bruyne, but now you've got me on the hop because now you're saying it's Coutinho. Right, well, I'm going to go fact, actually. Now I've thought it through. I'm going to say fact because Coutinho's goal was pretty spectacular, wasn't he? He's playing very well. Seems like he's living up to his price tag as far as I can see at the moment. Very good against Leicester, good in the week in Moscow. And Liverpool went a bit off the ball, yes, didn't they? But when he was on the ball, they certainly looked dangerous. So I'll say fact for that.
I'm going to agree with you. The interesting thing you mentioned there about the form of Coutinho, though, is he doesn't seem to be smiling. It's a really weird way because, these players, Sanchez, similar, they don't seem like they're going to relax back into their football. They're playing well. Sanchez had a great back heel in Arsenal's 2-0 win over Brighton. But Coutinho, he looked grumpy. Even when he scored, he didn't even smile. So, it's almost like I'm going to play because I like playing and I'm going to play well because I'm good, but I'm still here under protest. It's a little bit strange there. I'm going to say fact as well. The other good goal over the weekend was Harry Kane. He scored a really good one in that victory over Huddersfield.
Right up there.
I'm surprised you haven't said Yoshida.
I don't think it was as good as the other goals you talked about. I mean, it was a good acrobatic effort, but I think it was one of those. It was a bit of a swinger, and it went in off the bar, didn't it? So that always looks better, doesn't it, when the ball goes in off the bar. But I think your point about Kane was a good one. That was a terrific goal, wasn't it? Wonderful turn and shot. The keeper had no chance there. No, I mean, Yoshida's top 5, but I don't think it was as good as Coutinho's goal. The other thing about Coutinho's goal is the way he took the ball out of the air at the beginning, wasn't it? He moved to the left and then pivoted to the right. I mean, how do you stop it? How do you stop that goal? If you're the defence, okay, you can say, well, you get closer to him, you get tighter to him. But you can't just all swarm around Coutinho, otherwise you've got the rest of Liverpool's attacking players left free. So you've got to stand back a little bit. And I think that's the... Whereas if you think about Yoshida's goal, Stoke could have stopped it because they could have cut the corner out. They could have got to Boufal. They could have been tighter to Yoshida in the box if you think about it. In the box, you'd expect to be a bit tighter than that.
Yeah, I agree with you. The one thing about the Coutinho goal is if you watch Shelvey holds back on closing him down. And then there was a similar moment in the second half where Coutinho was in a similar situation and Shelvey completely ran out and blocked him and stopped him, and you thought, oh, maybe had you done that in the first half. But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about what I've already hinted at. We were going to talk about the best midfielder in the Premier League right now. Kevin De Bruyne is the best midfielder in the Premier League. Fact or fiction? Of course, De Bruyne scoring against his former club, Chelsea, for Manchester City at Stamford Bridge on Saturday. Thoughts, David?
Right now, I think it's got to be fact. I didn't actually see the game on Saturday, but I have seen the highlights. I've seen the goal, which is terrific. Picks it up with the right and then gets it back on his left. I mean, talk about two-footed play. That's what makes the difference, isn't it? If you're talking about right now, you've got to say De Bruyne, but you've got to remember what effect Kante's had over the last couple of seasons, 2 or 3 seasons. It would be difficult if you're looking more long-term not to say he's the best midfielder around at the moment. But the best midfielder over the last, say, 6 months to a year. But if you're talking about the last weekend, I guess you have to go with De Bruyne. How long's your time frame on this, Richard?
I would say probably this season. So from now until the start of the season, but also thinking about from now until the end of the season as a whole. So what he's done so far and also what he could do in the next few months. That's how I'm kind of looking at this. It's interesting when you mention Kante, because when I was thinking, all right, who else could it be? He came to my mind. But if I was a football manager or a football chairman or director of football these days, if I had the opportunity to buy Kante or De Bruyne, I think I'd always go with De Bruyne, mainly for the creativity more than anything else.
Oh, I don't know. I think that's a tough call. I think I'd probably look at Kante before De Bruyne. It's very, very tight call, but I think I'd probably go with Kante. I mean, obviously, would they be? It depends on the price, doesn't it? The player as well. But if you're saying they're both the same.
Well, we lost David for just a moment. Hopefully, we'll connect back with him. Let's just see what we can do. This is the excitement of live broadcasting. I've got a feeling maybe his battery ran out, which could be certainly very interesting. We'll just try and reconnect with David. In fact, while we do that, why don't I tell you about some of the merchandise we have here at Sportacino.com, and you can take a look at it. See if there's anything you want to buy, maybe as an early Christmas gift. Now, I don't know if David Garrett hung up in protest there at my comments that perhaps a football manager or a director of football would prefer to buy Kevin De Bruyne ahead of N'Golo Kante, but we are trying to get David back on the programme. And of course, we'd love to get your thoughts on Facebook, YouTube and on Periscope as to who you think the best midfielder in the Premier League is right now. We are talking about, is Kevin De Bruyne the best midfielder in the Premier League right now? Fact or fiction? It's a poll we've got going on our Twitter page as well, at Sportacino. Please add us on Twitter and also on Facebook as well. It'd be great to hear from you on today's Fact or Fiction. That is what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about Philippe Coutinho. Philippe Coutinho scored the best Premier League goal of the weekend. Fact or fiction? Both David and I said fact. We both believe Coutinho scored the best goal. That was ahead of the goal by Kane against Huddersfield, and of course the goal against my brain's just gone dead, for Yoshida for Southampton against Stoke. They were also ones which were contenders, but we agreed that it would be Philippe Coutinho. And while we're without David, I'll just give you my opinion on the Kevin De Bruyne is the best Premier League midfielder. And there were players I had thought about in that category. You could look at the likes of Coutinho, Mane, perhaps even N'Golo Kante, as we suggested with David. But player for player, I think Eden Hazard is a better player than Kevin De Bruyne. He's been coming back from injury. I thought he was given no help on Saturday against Manchester City due to the tactical limitations that Chelsea's manager Antonio Conte put on his side. He pretty much played six midfielders. He played three defenders. Well, he played a 3-5-2, but it was more of a 3-5-1-1. So even when Hazard got the ball, he could only ever find his striker, which for only about half an hour of the game, it was Morata. And then they brought on, I believe, Willian. So they didn't even have any strikers on the field. I'm not sure that that was the best idea from Chelsea, but I still think Hazard is a better midfielder than De Bruyne. And I also think if you classify Sanchez as a midfielder, he's certainly an attacking player. You could argue maybe he's a forward or an attacking midfielder, or as Football Manager would probably say, AMF, maybe. I would consider Sanchez a better player as well. So that is what I'm going. And I believe in just one moment, we've got David Garrett back. David, welcome back to the programme. I hope you didn't hang up there in absolute disgust of the of De Bruyne over Kante there.
No, it wasn't disgust. It was a technical gremlin. Hopefully the show soldiered on without me. I'm sure it did. And hopefully it wasn't better.
It was just me just nattering on and talking about the great merch you can get at Sportacino.com. If you haven't got a T-shirt or a mug already, David, get to the store. While you were away, David, I was just saying that Kevin De Bruyne in my opinion, is not the best midfielder in the Premier League. I actually said it's Eden Hazard.
What, right now?
Well, he's been injured, and
yeah, that's true.
And the reason I
what about bringing in players like that? You know, players that play just behind the front guys. Then you've got to bring Coutinho into it. What about Sanchez? Is Sanchez a midfield player?
I was arguing that as well. I would say if this was Football Manager, he's an attacking midfield / forward.
So that means he counts.
I think he counts. Well, crucially, on Fantasy Premier League, he's down as a midfielder.
Okay, are they the Bible we go by? Or are they?
It's effectively the official Premier League fantasy game. So.
Oh, well, fair enough. That's pretty official. Yeah, well, in that case, then a whole plethora of other players are coming into the equation, aren't they?
Such as?
Well, the ones I mentioned. What about Rashford? Is he a midfield player?
No, for me, Rashford is a striker playing out wide.
Dele Alli gets goals.
Dele Alli is a midfielder for sure.
He started the season very well, actually.
So we could debate this all day, but I think we should move on. And if anyone wants to contribute in the conversation, please let us know on Twitter and Facebook. All right, next up on Fact or Fiction, we're going to be talking about your team, David. Southampton need to play 2 strikers. Fact or fiction?
Fact, but at the moment, unfortunately, it is fiction. There's some ban apparently against playing 2 strikers. I don't know. They refuse to do it unless they're 2-1 down with 15 seconds to go, and then they bring on Charlie Austin for a little cameo, play him up alongside either Long or Gabbiadini. Certainly, they should be doing it at home. The first game against Swansea was the one where it was the most obvious. So we actually played pretty well against Swansea. If we'd had 2 strikers on the pitch, I'm sure we'd have won the game. We could have won the game anyway. It was a 0-0 draw. But that was the game where it stood out the most for me because we just had no power up front. We had Gabbiadini. The poor lad's running round. He's got no chance. He's got no help at all. So I would say it's fact, but I don't think it's going to happen. Southampton have decided they're going to play a certain way. They have this idea that they're going to play from the youth academy all the way through with a 4-3-3 formation. They played the same under Pochettino, under Koeman, under Puel. They're playing the same under Pellegrino. And it's a situation where the new managers come in, you think you'd be buzzing with new ideas. And we're doing exactly the same as we did last season. Bit odd, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree. And there is just a thing about the Premier League where teams are a little bit scared to play 2 strikers. It's almost unfashionable. And yet you notice that some of the Premier League managers, as soon as they see a little bit of success from another manager, they change their formation. We've seen that with Conte. They won the league with a 3-4-3. And now look at all the teams playing a similar formation. Chelsea obviously started it, but the teams like Arsenal have done it. City are kind of like that. You're seeing Stoke, for example, are playing like that. And you know, it worked for Chelsea. It doesn't mean it works for every other team. And Brighton, for example, won the Championship playing 4-4-2 and have now moved to a 4-4-1-1. Why teams don't want to play 2 strikers, I don't know. But just looking at Southampton's statistics, only 2 wins out of 8, only scored 7 goals in their last 14. You know, they've really got to think of something out of the box to try and get more goals. Why isn't Charlie Austin starting, Dave?
Well, I think probably on the partly on the basis of what you're saying that they don't want to play 2 strikers. If they were going to play 2 strikers, I think he probably would be in the team. But if you decide you're only going to play 1, then at the moment Southampton have a choice of Manolo Gabbiadini, Shane Long, and Charlie Austin. They started the season with Gabbiadini. That was ineffective for the reasons that I've given, which is that I think he was up front on his own. So they've now switched to Long. I wouldn't be surprised if after the international break they then give Austin a run. So I think you'll end up with the first sort of 10 or 15 games. All of them will play various games, 1 up front, until perhaps the penny drops or they get into a relegation scrap and then figure they've got nothing to lose. At that point, they might play more than 1. If I was picking between the 3 myself right now, if you were going to restrict me to only playing 1 striker, I would go with Shane Long, on the basis that I think he's a bit of a menace to centre halves. But I wouldn't play 1 up front. I'd be playing 2 up front. And I would probably be playing Austin and Long, probably. The jury's a little bit out on Gabbiadini. He started on fire. but his link-up play isn't great. Now, alongside another guy, because I've never seen him play in the two up front. He's played for a Spur 18 months. We've never played two up front, so I cannot tell you how good or bad Manolo Gabbiadini is playing in the front two, because I've never seen it. Mate, I've not seen him play before he got into Southampton, so I can't tell you what he's like in the front two. I can tell you what Austin and Long are like in the front two, because I've seen it before with other clubs, or Southampton a couple of years ago when they did play two up front in some games. So I would probably go with what I know, but certainly Gabbiadini can finish. But then I think Austin can finish as well. He doesn't look as fit, Austin, as he could be, although he's always been, kind of bulky. When Graziano Pella played for us, he never looked that fit, but he had that presence up front, which I think Austin gives us. But the reason he's not playing at the moment is because Saints have got a pattern where they say, right, we're going to play three in midfield, and we're going to play three up front, and, 2 into 1 doesn't go.
And of course, he did have a really hot spell. I think it was about December last year before he got injured again, had a lot of injury problems. All right, Dave, let's move on away from Southampton. It's our last topic from the English Premier League today, and it's about a team in a lot more trouble than Southampton at the moment. It is Crystal Palace. And our statement is Crystal Palace will be playing Championship football next season. Fact or fiction, Dave?
Can you make any argument to the contrary? It has to be. I cannot see. I mean, they have had some tough games. I saw the game against Southampton, which was the first game under Roy Hodgson. You thought they'll get a little bit of bounce under the new manager, but we did a bit of a number on them, really. I think we deserved to win. We outplayed them, and we're not great. That's the point. So if we outplayed them, that is a bad sign for Palace. Losing 4-0 at Manchester United, losing to Manchester City, lots of teams are going to do that this season, aren't they? It's the games against the Huddersfields, and they lost to Swansea, didn't they, as well? They've lost Benteke out through injury I think he's out for the best part of 2 months, isn't he? He hasn't started the season great, but you do feel he is a threat when he's on the pitch. I can't make any case for them, Richard. Could you make any case at all? I mean, they can't bring anybody in, can they? Well, I know they can bring in players who are out of contract. I mean, Carlton Cole's been talked about. He's not going to save their season, is he? He's just past his best. I cannot see how you can make any case for them staying up at the moment. Even though Roy Hodgson has a pretty good record of pulling teams out of the fire, but he's got to put his greatest escape act ever out this time. This would be, even by his standards, unprecedented. And this also comes down to another point. If they go down, is it so bad? Rather than chase and try and buy players in January, they might be in a better position where they can consolidate, bring in a few younger players, and perhaps look to the future. Because it might be easier in the sense that by the time the January transfer window comes around, there's such a lost hope. Palace fans won't want to hear this. It's not going to help them. I totally accept that. They're going to want to try and find a way out of it. But it may be the situation where they start to look at the longer term. Because I think part of the problem at Palace has been everything's been kind of short term, hasn't it? They got Allardyce in quickly. You can't. I mean, there's no way that Hodgson is a long term appointment because of his age. Did they pull the trigger a bit too quick on De Boer? I think they did. Wouldn't you agree with that? I mean, what did he have? 4 games and 1 game?
That's the thing, Dave. He's clearly tried to bring in players to play a certain system with 3 at the back and try to play a bit of an Ajax way, and then they get rid of him. And then Hodgson is trying to fit these players back into, say, the kind of style Allardyce was playing. And you think, they brought in De Boer and they think long term, but as you say, Hodgson is, again, not only in that Allardyce, but in that Pulis bracket of keep us up and then we'll see what happens next season. As far as being in the Championship could be a good thing, that's a real lottery. You could be a team such as Middlesbrough throughout the years who've gone down and been able to go back up, but then you could be such as a Blackburn really struggling down the bottom, or Bolton who've made double relegation in the past. It is difficult.
Don't go chasing. This is the thing, isn't it? If you try and keep it steady, then that shouldn't happen. If you come out of the Premier League with a parachute money, you shouldn't be in a position where you're down at the bottom of the Championship. If you just play it sensible. Don't get rash. Don't start chucking managers away. It's very difficult because the one thing that will certainly happen when you go down is that the attendances will drop. And the problem is when you start playing home matches in a stadium which is half full, 3/4 full, that is tricky because the atmosphere goes flat very quickly, particularly if you go 1-0 down, and then you can get dragged into it. But I think you've got to try and, because a lot of these teams, it's not like they've never been relegated before. They've been down there before. I think it'll be a very brave. Well, the manager would never say it, but a brave chairman to say, look, we've had a blip, we can bounce back. But I think that's better than going chasing, because you're right. The teams that have really had a massive fallout are the teams that have just gone chasing, haven't they? They've changed the managers all over the place. They haven't had any stability. I obviously you'd rather be in the Premier League because that's where you want to be. But 3 teams are going to go, aren't they? Who do you think the others will be? If we say Palace are down and out, who's going to join them, do you think?
Oh, you're throwing that at me by a little bit of a surprise. I would probably say Huddersfield.
Mm-hmm.
They had a really good start. Who's down there at the moment? Everton will be fine, even though they're in a bit of a pickle at the moment. Newcastle should be all right. Burnley will be all right. I think Swansea could be in trouble this season. I think they've got good firepower, good manager. I'm very hopeful on Brighton, but I think Brighton could finish anywhere from 20th to 9th. I think where they are 14th, I would take and right now I think that would be an extremely good result. Who else is down there at the moment, David?
I think you've named most of them. The one I just mentioned there was West Ham. I know they won at the weekend, but I don't think West Ham look very good. So they don't seem to be replaced by it to me. Ever since he's left, they've lost their creativity. So I think they could be down there. I must say I'm not confident that Brighton are going to stay up, although I haven't watched them as much as you have. So I'm basing that really on their results so far rather than on actually seeing them play. But it's always going to be tough. The teams are coming up. I think Huddersfield will be okay. I see something in Huddersfield. I think Huddersfield, they're not going to be high in the league, certainly not. But I just have a feeling that they're going to be okay.
The other one down there, Dave, is Bournemouth. They haven't had a great start. So I just wonder what could happen with them. As far as Brighton go, it's the lack of firepower, and as I mentioned, I'm not so sure about playing the 5 in the midfield. I think they should actually just go for it and play 2 up front. But we can discuss Brighton another time. Let's move on. We're going to move away from the Premier League right now, David. We're going to talk about what happened in Spain over the weekend, and of course there were violent scenes in Catalonia as there was a referendum held for Catalonia to be independent of Spain, and it forced the Barcelona game against Las Palmas to be played behind closed doors. And because of that, Gerard Piqué has just been considering his international future with the Spanish national team. He already gets booed, he already gets jeered while playing for Spain due to his stance with Catalonia. And so we are saying, it's a little bit political for Sportacino today, we are saying Gerard Piqué should retire from international football. Fact or fiction, David?
Well, my feeling on it is always that a player should try to play for their country as long as they possibly can. Now, if he doesn't want to play for Spain, then I guess it's up to him. But I would say fiction. I'd like to see him personally, because he's a great player, to keep playing for Spain. I think once you get to a World Cup and hopefully Spain are doing well, I'm sure his political allegiances will be forgotten. People will be just seeing him as a footballer. There are parallels, aren't there, to be drawn between what's going on there and what's going on in the NFL at the moment as well. I would say fiction from my point of view, but it's up to Gerard Piqué if he wants to play for Spain. But I do feel there's a lot of players that walk away from the international scene a little bit too early. I think some of them, perhaps they realise that they're not going to be at the centre of the team anymore. They might be a bit of a squad player. And then often when a World Cup comes around, they tend to change their mind, don't they, a little bit? And decide, maybe I'll give it another one more hurrah. I wouldn't be that surprised if Rooney was back for the World Cup for England. I actually thought when he came on yesterday, I thought he played very well. I'm surprised he didn't start.
He's dipped a little bit in form in the last few weeks, but so have Everton. So kind of a bit of a parallel
Well,
there.
the two go hand in hand, I think, Richard. And I mean, Everton have got a little bit of a confidence problem at the moment, but I thought they offered more. Okay, they're chasing the game. They're bound to throw more forward. Burnley are bound to sit back. But I thought once he came on, they offered more going forward. I wonder whether Rooney has got 40 games, 50 games, if you count the Europa League in him in the season. But I think Everton knew that, didn't they, when they bought him? So I think they're going to have to try and use him a little bit sparingly. But who else have they got? What's their better option? I'm not quite sure at the moment. They seem to have just lost their way a little bit at the moment. But I think you're right. I think they'll be okay. Everton. They'll be somewhere in the middle. I think. Although I think about quite a lot of teams, they can't all be in the middle, can they? Some are going to be a little bit higher and some are going to be a little bit lower. But I think Everton were hoping for a little bit more, weren't they, than just hanging around the mid-table.
Well, the amount of money they spent. But let's return back to Spain. We've gone back to Merseyside there. Let's talk about Gerard Piqué. And I'm a bit on the fence on this one, David. Part of me thinks he should definitely not retire because it's something to do with politics, and politics and football shouldn't mix, but inevitably they always do. Because it's life. Part of me thinks he should just continue playing because he is a good player. He is an important member of that team. And then part of me thinks if it actually does cause a detriment to the team, then is it time for him to step aside? He is 30 years old. It is an age where he could give other younger players an opportunity. He has won a World Cup and a European Championship before. Does he need to achieve anything more with Spain? And then also, if he is going to retire, should it be now? Because then that gives Spain up until the World Cup to find a suitable replacement or a partner. I'm really stuck on the fence. But I think just due to the fact that I don't think that political interference should play a part or political feelings should interfere in anything to do with football, I'm going to go with fiction with you as well. All right, we're going to have.
I agree.
Pardon, David?
I think I agree with those sentiments that you've just made. I think most of that I'd agree with. Yeah.
Well, we're going to have one last topic, and it's going to be away from football. We're going to talk a little bit about tennis. I'll be honest, I haven't been across tennis as much as I normally am, and I don't think you have either, David. But we've both got an opinion, so let's get it out there. And we are talking about Johanna Konta. And the statement says, Johanna Konta will fail to qualify for the WTA finals. Fact or fiction?
I think she might. I think it's probably fiction. I think she will manage to scrape in. I think she'll be okay. But I always think that the British players, Konta and Murray in this case, or in many cases down the years, they do get that rankings boost. I think from being at Wimbledon, where they tend to perform very well because the home crowd is behind them, and then it's a little bit more difficult, understandably, for them at other venues. But I think she. I suppose what you're asking really is she in the top 8 players in the world? I think she just about is. Wouldn't you say so?
Do you think she's got a Grand Slam victory in her locker in the future?
No, I don't think she quite has, although there have been a few surprise winners in the women's events down the years, especially when Serena's not there. So you wouldn't rule it out completely, but I would think the likes of Ostapenko coming up behind probably would have more chance. Muguruza, I think she's got more Grand Slams in her, the Wimbledon champion. So I wouldn't expect her to win a Grand Slam, but she's still done very well, Johanna Konta. And I wouldn't rule it out completely. It's not one of those you look at and go, oh no chance at all. No, she's in the mix, but I think probably it's not quite going to happen for her. But then I thought that about Murray for a long time until he did win one. If you'd asked me before he won the US Open, then went on to win Wimbledon, whether he was going to win one, I didn't think he could quite beat Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer in the same week. He might have to beat all 3. He might only have to beat 2. And in the end, he proved he could do it. So I think she's in with a shout, but I don't think she will quite manage to do it. But I still think she's done very well. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure she's going to make Singapore, there are obviously 8 slots and 6 of them are filled at the moment, and she's only won twice since Wimbledon, and this is her 5th straight defeat here in China this week. So the form is not with her. The one thing I haven't checked is who else could possibly take those 2 spots. And what you often find with these round robin format tournaments is very often one of the players ends up injured or doesn't really want to play the 3rd match of the round robin when they've lost the first 2 and have then got a calf strain or something like that. So in a really weird way, I don't think she might qualify for the top 8, but I could still see her playing in Singapore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that could well happen. Yeah, that's possible. I hadn't necessarily considered that, but I think one way or another she could play. There's an incentive, so she may find the form just at the right time. She's certainly shown she can do it in the past, but yeah, I think she might just scrape in. Well, I don't know how far she'll go in the event, but I think she might scrape in. I hope she does, because I think she deserves to over the year. It's a little bit of a shame, isn't it, when you get to the end of season event and you could have been playing fantastically for the first 3 or 4 months of the year and you just have a bit of a dip in form. We had a bit of an injury, and it can cost you right at the end, which is kind of what's happened to her, isn't it, really?
The 6 which have qualified, David, are Muguruza, Halep, Pliskova, Svitolina, Venus Williams and Caroline Wozniacki. So there's 2 spaces left. David, thank you so much for your time on Sportocino today on Fact or Fiction. I've been trying to get you on the show for a while. Finally got you down. David, how can we continue to follow any of your work on social media, or what are you up to at the moment? What is going on in your world?
Mostly I work for Sky Sports News, so I suppose in a sense you can follow my work by watching Sky Sports News. I'm working there, kind of organising the shows in effect. You won't see too much of my face. This is a rarity these days. Try and keep the face locked away, and just let my fingers on the keys do the talking.
I'm going to call this an exclusive then.
Well, it is an exclusive. I don't even want to call it that, but that's what it is.
An exclusive interview with David Garrett here on Fact or Fiction, Sportocino.
Just broke the internet.
David, thank you so much for being on the programme today, and I'll speak to you soon.
See you soon, mate.
Really good to speak to David on today's Fact or Fiction. Lots of interesting topics were discussed. If you've got any opinion on whatever we've spoken about, please get involved in the comments section on Facebook and on Twitter and on Periscope, of course. And if you want to listen back to this, we are on iTunes. Well, I've been Richard Parr. You can follow me on Twitter at Richard_Parr. We will be back next week from 11 a.m. UK time to discuss more of the biggest stories in sports. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Goodbye.